So hello, my name is Kevin Maynell, and I'm working for the Internet Society. And I'd like to thank RightsCon 2021 for inviting us to speak at this year's event. I'm going to be talking about routing security as a cyber norm and why this is important for the security and resilience of the Internet. But first of all, what is routing and why is it needed? Well, the Internet is actually a global system of interconnected computer networks that use the TCP/IP protocols. And routing is needed to get packets from one destination to another. So you have these specialized computing devices known as routers that discover other connected networks and forward the packets to them. As a general rule, each network is connected to the rest of the Internet with a router, and then these routers forward packets to other routers, and ultimately onwards to the final destination based on the IP address that's specified in the packet. So routers use something called Border Gateway Protocol, or BGP, to exchange reachability information. So in other words, the other networks that they know how to reach. And then each router uses this information to build a routing table to pick the best route when sending a packet. So collectively, they build up a roadmap of the whole Internet. And just to give an idea of scale, there are just over 71,000 networks that are connected to the Internet. These are known as autonomous systems, and they each use a unique autonomous system number, or ASN, for identification. There are also just over 78,000 advertised IP prefixes, which essentially correspond to routes across the Internet. And the diagram on the right is an attempted visualization of the global routing system and all of the relationships between the 71,000 or so ASNs. So what's the problem with the global routing system? Well, BGP is based entirely on unverified trust between networks, as it doesn't actually have any built-in validation that updates are legitimate. So this essentially means that any network can announce any information, and it's very hard to verify this because there's really a lack of reliable resource data. So in other words, you can actually prove that a network is authorized to originate certain IP prefixes or AS numbers. And as a result, the routing system is under attack on a daily basis. And there are three main types of attack. You have something called route hijacking. So this is where a network operator or an attacker is impersonating another network operator. And this can cause packets to be forwarded to the wrong place. It can also cause denial of service attacks and increases the possibility of traffic interception. You then have route leaks, which is very similar to a route hijack, but this is usually more down to accidental misconfiguration. So the result is very similar. The internet traffic goes to the wrong place, or maybe goes through a provider where it shouldn't be going through, and this can be problematic for a number of reasons. And then finally, you have IP address spoofing. So this is where someone creates an IP packet with a false source IP address, usually to hide their identity or to impersonate another computing system. And this is actually the root cause of many reflection DDoS attacks. So you'll often hear about some of the headline route hijacks or route leaks. Certainly you'll hear about distributed denial of service attacks in the media. But the reality is that this is happening every day. And this graph here is just showing potential BGP hijacks for a 6-month period during 2020. And as you can see, the scale of this is smaller or greater depending on the period. But yeah, there are basically attacks on the routing system every day. So what can be done to fix these routing problems? Well, there have been widespread industry efforts to improve other aspects of internet security. There has been a big push, for example, on web security. So that was introduced with SSL and more recently TLS. So in other words, to encrypt transactions, web transactions. There's also been quite significant efforts to cryptographically verify DNS queries. So that's the DNSX system. So really, why has routing not been given the same consideration until now? Well, in fact, there are already industry-developed best practices that can eliminate most of the common threats in the global routing system. But the main problem is that each network operator needs to contribute to routing security. And in fact, they have little incentive, as implementing routing security measures doesn't actually bring immediate benefits to them. It really needs to be a significant number of operators need to be doing this before you see the overall benefits of this. And another issue is that routing incidents can also be hard to identify, debug, and fix as well. So it's sort of been very easy to just sort of move the problem somewhere else, and as a result, nobody takes significant enough action or significant action to address these problems. But can this problem be solved without regulation? Well, in fact, the internet has always been built on cooperation, common values, and agreed practices. And in fact, many operational practices are already accepted as norms. So what really needs to happen is that a resilient and secure global routing system needs to become a common value amongst network operators, and perhaps also customers as well. And in particular, good routing security practices need to be accepted as a norm. So in other words, don't accept and propagate the mistakes of others. So validate what you're accepting. Also protect your neighbors from your own mistakes. So in other words, don't hijack and don't leak routes on the global routing system. But then another important norm to be is to enable others to validate that you're actually authorized to originate AS numbers and IP prefixes. So this can be done through internet routing registries and through the RPKI infrastructure. So there are sort of 4 norms that we've identified, and which if these are implemented by operators, it will go a long way to reducing many of the problems we see on the global routing system. So for example, you have route filtering, in other words, preventing the propagation of incorrect routing information. You have anti-spoofing, so preventing traffic with spoof source IP addresses from leaving your network. You have coordination, so this is really making sure that you have up-to-date contact information. You have responses, you're responsive when incidents occur. And then finally, global validation. So this is allowing other networks to validate your number resources. And as I mentioned, this can be done through internet routing registries or also through the RPKI system. So what are we looking to achieve here? Well, really, everyone will benefit from routing security. So really, we're out to encourage networks to implement these routing security best practices, but also raise customer awareness so that the customers themselves actually start demanding this from their network providers. But we also need to help networks to identify and address some of the problems that they have. In many cases, they're just simply not aware that they have a number of these issues. So really, there needs to be some support and help on the sort of the monitoring side of things. But the idea is that the more operators that do apply these norms, the fewer incidents that there will be, and ultimately the less damage they can do. So we're also looking to develop a database of routing incidents to demonstrate where the problems exist, and whether we can actually then measure whether things are improving over time in response to better routing security measures. So the idea is if you can see some positive impact, that will encourage more network operators to adopt them. And ultimately to build a self-regulating community of security-minded network operators that actually do want to show commitment to making the global routing infrastructure more secure. So who can take action? Well, I already mentioned, internet service providers. Of course, there will be large enterprise, academic, and government networks. Of course, the CDN and cloud providers, they can all make a very valuable contribution. And of course, internet exchange points, they can encourage their customers and members to adopt a lot of these measures. But also you have computer security incident response teams. They already are involved with a lot of incident handling and response capabilities. But traditionally they haven't really adopted routing security as one of within their portfolio. So that's an important thing that they can add into their activity plans. Equipment vendors, they can also implement sensible defaults in their equipment. So for example, route filtering, allowing resource validation, but also security aware customers who will actually choose providers based on their commitment to more secure routing values. And also the public sector, perhaps these can also be put into procurement requirements when they're procuring connectivity and when they're procuring equipment from vendors. So I just wanted to mention that all of these routing security norms have been put under the umbrella of something called MANRS, or mutually agreed norms for routing security. So this is a program that has been started by the Internet Society, but actually we see as a community-driven activity. So again, this is providing the defining actions to eliminate a lot of the common threats in the global routing system. A lot of these are, well, most of these are just bringing together already established industry best practices, and it's really based on collaboration between participants and shared responsibility for the internet infrastructure. So what impact has all this been having? I mean, you have to sort of, take correlations sometimes with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But what we've certainly seen is as operators have adopted these sort of 4 basic routing security norms, or actions, as we like to call them, we have actually seen a corresponding drop in observed routing incidents. So there does seem to be a cause and effect there, which is quite positive, I think, for the MANRS program. So what we would do is we really want to encourage uptake of routing security norms, and we definitely encourage interested parties to get involved in the community. We really like to get particularly the MANRS participants to implement actions in their own networks, but also we're interested in having partners to help promote and support the MANRS objectives as well. So we do also have this tool which can help identify and address routing incidents. This is known as the MANRS Observatory. It is actually publicly accessible. The more detailed information is only available to members, but certainly the general public can go and look at sort of the aggregated statistics for the whole of the internet and by country, by region. So that's actually quite a useful source of information to look at how things are, how routing security is evolving over time. So that's everything from me. Again, I'd like to thank RightsCon for the opportunity to present this important issue, and thank you for your attention.